Godzilla is not just a force of nature or just some giant creature. It's something all the more terrifying. A god walking amongst humans.
大臣、先の戦争では旧日本軍の希望的観測、机上の空論、こうあってほしいという発想の論にしがみついておくために、国民に300万人以上もの犠牲者が出ています。根拠のない楽観は禁物です。
Ever since I sat down and watched Shin Godzilla, I have never had a movie make me feel so small and insignificant. I've never had a movie give me this sense of existential dread that at any given point, this force can just come out of nowhere and destroy every single thing that I've come to know and love. Wow. Sorry for getting existential there for a second. Released in 2016 and co-created and directed by Shinji Higuchi, director of Shin Ultraman, the live-action Attack on Titan movies, and also directly worked on Neon Genesis Evangelion. He would be joined by the madman himself and creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion, Hideki Anno. Having these two working together on a project would have already brought great things, but to have both of them work on a Godzilla movie, only true greatness could have come out of it. This was the second time I had sat down and watched Shin Godzilla. I first watched the film 2-ish years ago in my old apartment. A few of my hometown friends came down for a visit to Pittsburgh, and I showed them one of my favorite shops in town called Ides. It's a record store, video store, just a massive pop culture emporium. And when I was browsing the DVDs, I saw it. In all of its deep red glory, the DVD copy of Shin Godzilla. So, immediately after returning to my apartment, the three of us sat down and indulged in greatness. Now, at the time, I definitely liked the film, but I didn't necessarily understand everything going on. I felt that many things were left ambiguous, the filmmakers focused too much on the government characters and not Godzilla. But the only reason why I thought that way was because I didn't fully understand the historical context. Godzilla has always been a living metaphor, representing the repercussions of nuclear weaponry, the horror of man, conservation of the planet, and many others. This time, he stood for much more than just a message, but a real-world event. In 2011, Japan was hit with a magnitude 9 earthquake, causing a coastal tsunami. Both hit a nuclear power plant in Fukushima, causing a nuclear disaster. At the time, that moment would become the most devastating nuclear disaster the world had seen in over 25 years. Over 20,000 people went missing or were presumed dead. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to make light of the subject, but after doing just a bit of research after watching Shin Godzilla, you can easily see the impact that that event had on the film. It's almost like this film was a direct response to that very tragedy. If you look up images and compare frames from the movie and also images of the 2011 disaster, it's almost a 1-for-1 comparison. It's absolutely crazy. From the beginning of this film, we are met with conflict. An underwater expressway has leaked red water. The government of Tokyo seems to think it's just seawater, so they run the necessary protocols to protect not the people in the area, but themselves. The government gives their workers and all the higher-ups these flotation vests, in case water were to ever make it here. Seems a little excessive, but at least they're careful. Even citizens don't really know what to make of this flood. People are still trying to find some enjoyment in this stressful situation. For example, 2 young adults sliding down an emergency exit slide. I understand some people might not like that moment, but I really found some depth with it, showing the duality of a citizen without a care in the world compared to a government official that can only focus on damage and how much it would cost to fix the expressway. During the whole course of this film, I still have no idea how the government works, but that's definitely the point. To get one thing done, or even propose an idea, you'd have to jump through 5 other hoops just to get there. To hold a meeting, first they have to hold a meeting about holding a meeting. Like, what? And all the while, more and more expressways are getting destroyed. It's as if no one can even be bothered to look outside the window and see what's actually happening before they can do anything about it. A young bureaucrat by the name of Rando Yaguchi suggests it might be a creature of some sort that wandered into the harbor. Every old head in the room writes him off as just a kid. Minutes later, a news report comes on showing a giant tentacle. Huh. Sounds like the government should start listening to this guy, right? Nope. The Prime Minister doesn't want to scare the public, even though it's kinda late for that, and says he needs to talk to the best biologists they can get their hands on to figure out what's happening. When these biologists do arrive, they basically all say the same thing. We can't make a diagnosis simply because they can't put their credibility on the line. So even big-time biologists can't even make a call. It takes Yaguchi to call in an old friend, and she straight up disproves anything these biologists were saying. Not only because she's a good person, but she has nothing to lose. She's a genius, yes, but she doesn't have the reputation of these higher-up biologists. So, she doesn't need to worry about her image. She's only worried about fixing the problem. The Prime Minister decides to hold a press conference to ease the public. But it's hard to kinda hold a press conference to ease the people's minds when the people are the ones being affected by this flood and the creature directly. The government building is showing no signs of even being touched. The creature does eventually make its way into the city, causing more collateral damage, but it isn't attacking outright. It's helplessly flailing about, trying to get out of the area as soon as possible, because it doesn't belong there. It's as if a wild animal wandered into your house. It's scared for its life. It doesn't know where it is, what's happening, or even what to do. It can only react on instinct. Many homes, families, and lives have been destroyed before the government even thought about evacuating. A lot like the major event I mentioned earlier. The Prime Minister wants to get the military involved, but the government itself won't let themselves get involved. Because for some reason, a giant creature causing chaos in the city doesn't fit their specific criteria to even use weaponry. Like, what? The military does get involved after the city is seemingly evacuated. The Prime Minister doesn't want the military to act if there is a chance of an innocent dying. I appreciate the consciousness that the Prime Minister has, but I think it's only to save his self-image. The creature wanders back into the ocean after a long day of destruction. Days or even weeks pass with no signs of the creature. Everyone seems to have already forgotten about the tragedy. Again, I think that is very much the point. Everyone is trying to forget that any of this ever happened and passing it up as some sort of shared nightmare everybody had. Yaguchi is tired of having all these old heads make poor decisions, so he goes behind everyone's back and hires a room full of nerds, outcasts, and insanely smart people that aren't high on the food chain. Just like his friend, they don't need to worry about public image, as the public doesn't even know who they are. Radiation levels have started to rise in the areas the creature attacked. The workers are forced to keep quiet, as the higher-ups in the government don't want that information getting out and scaring the public. These characters will never cease to amaze me with how awful their ideas are. And trust me, they're only going to get worse. Because they decided to keep everything under wraps and humans being curious by nature, people quickly take to social media saying that their destroyed homes are spewing radiation. So because they decided to wait, they seem even less credible to the public. 60 years before the events of the film would take place, unregulated radiation dumpings occurred. Something was in the area when the dumping took place. That thing quickly adapted to that environment and only continued to grow and evolve. An ex-college professor not only knew that creature was evolving, but helped create it, as he was working with the people who did all of the illegal dumping. He was enraged that his wife died from radiation poisoning, so he wanted to rapidly evolve a creature to not only withstand such environments, but be able to grow because of it. He wasn't playing God, more so creating one. Something that no science could ever answer. That thing being Godzilla, translated to God incarnate. Within the radiation found at one of the sites, new periodic elements have been added to the table. With every new piece of information found within Godzilla, the thoughts of him become more and more godlike. A creature so advanced, it not only could survive any environment, but created new ways of survival humans couldn't even come close to understanding. Quick side note, but something I really enjoyed about this film is how serious they take their logic. If anyone has ever seen Neon Genesis Evangelion, most of the science in that show is entirely fake, but the characters say it with such confidence and have facts to further make their point clear, the more and more the audience has to believe them. Yes, I know as an audience member that none of this could really happen, but the fact that everyone is taking it so seriously just makes it seem all the more accurate. Super cool detail that I just wanted to bring up. The group of misfit scientists have theorized that Godzilla cannot be killed, but could theoretically be immobilized by encasing it in super cold elements. Think of it like cooling a nuclear power plant. The reactor, or in this case Godzilla's heart, would slow down to basically a stop. This isn't exactly getting rid of the problem, but prolonging the inevitable, and hoping in the future they can find a way to take care of the god. A scene I especially love is one that is almost completely silent. It takes place in the middle of the night. All government officials have gone home, except for everyone working under Yaguchi. They all basically live in this government building now, working tirelessly to help find a way to stop Godzilla. Just on the outside of the walls, protesters can be heard. They chant, "Save Godzilla, save Godzilla." Godzilla has struck so much fear into the citizens that some of them have begun idolizing it as a god itself. Not praying for it out of love, but out of fear, clenching to the fact that hopefully, if he hears them, they won't die in the next foreseeable attack. That scene might as well be an Akira reference. Near the climax of the film, when people are so scared of Tetsuo, they begin to idolize him and fear for the return of Akira. An amazing thing this film does is not give hope that everything will just work out, but the fact that if people come together and really focus on something, then anything is possible. This film will not only have you fearful of humanity, but also prove that we aren't just some money and success craving animals. We are a race that will continue to grow, evolve, and learn from our fatal flaws. Godzilla not only resurfaced, but has evolved once again, almost to a point of human understanding. The government, scientists, and even citizens have no idea what to make of this, even less so than the other forms of Godzilla. If anyone hasn't already picked up on it, the film likes to use modern technology. Not only in the plot with people sharing theories online, but also for camera movements. Every time Godzilla attacks, we aren't focused on our main characters. The camera moves in the chaos just like a scared citizen. The editing is also so much fun in this film. Post-zooms, insanely quick cuts, and sound effects all work together in a symphony of editing genius. Unlike the other attack, the government is quick to take action this time. Weird that when the most human casualties could occur, they're ready to go in guns blazing against Godzilla. All hospitals and old folks' homes aren't even close to finishing evacuation. The thought process is to save the many and leave behind the few, but leaving behind anybody to die to either Godzilla or nearby explosions is just downright deplorable and thoroughly disgusts me. I hate to reiterate this, but that is definitely the point. Every government would probably make the same decision: save the young and leave the old and weak to die. The first two weapons from the Japanese military don't seem to work, so their bright idea is to launch everything at it. If something doesn't work, try, and just drop a bomb on it, I guess. And even after all of that, Godzilla still doesn't have a scratch on him. The US military, as always, decides to get involved without asking anyone. 3 bombers fly above Godzilla and drop bombs that could potentially level the entire city if they miss. Sounds like a reference to something else that's happened in history. Godzilla is on a direct path toward the main government building where all of these operations have been taking place. So everyone is forced to pack up and retreat underground with all the other citizens, as no one can do anything anymore. With all operations on hold, everyone can just sit underground and wait. Imagine going through that for just a moment. You are well aware that there is a giant creature above you, causing nothing but carnage, and all you can do is sit. I truly can't imagine anything more horrifying. As Godzilla's destruction gets more and more chaotic, the filmmakers make the choice to show each district by name that was destroyed. This might not be a detail many people care about. To me, it makes me more and more attached to those places. Before, those were just buildings, but now I know the names of the districts. I can start to imagine the people that would have lived, worked, or even played in those places. The destruction scene almost felt like Godzilla's response to how poor of a job the Japanese government responded to all of this. My thought process, it doesn't have to destroy most of the city, but it did just to send a message of, if you try this again and don't succeed, I'm taking the rest of the country with me. After exhausting all of its energy, Godzilla sleeps until the next attack. It almost looks like a statue, displaying what it has done and what will happen. Something I really love about this film is how much they use the entire frame. So for example, as you guys have probably noticed while watching, the directors chose to have subtitles pop up in the top part of the screen and in the lower part of the screen. The lower part of the screen is always used for dialogue, where the top part of the screen is always used for locations, important information, or character names. Just a super minor detail that I just absolutely love, and I just love the creative use of the screen. It's just so creative and so cool, and I just really had to mention that. The days following the attack, the government officials are sent to a radiation-free zone. They are all clothed, bathed, and taken care of, while the rest of the population is left to live off of scraps and living in community centers or large public spaces. Yaguchi has a saving grace moment of sorts. He doesn't feel directly responsible for what happened, but he feels like another cog in the machine that didn't help its citizens. Like many others, he feels like he has let his people down. He has failed to do his public duties. He has failed as a representative, and he has failed as a human. An interesting thing to bring up is the everyday citizens of the film. Normally in Godzilla movies, especially the first, we get a sense of community, that the travesties happening aren't just happening to a city or country, but to people. And in this movie, we rarely get any of that. We don't really get a scene with any average citizen. We only really spend time with the government officials. And again, that is definitely the point in my mind. If the government doesn't really care about the citizens, then why should the film? Which, to me, is such an interesting and artistic take for this film. The subtlety and nuance of this film is absolutely perfect, which were the things that went right over my head in my first watch through. This is one of the final side tangents, I swear. But I love the use of practical effects in this film. The amount of destruction shown practically instead of the use of CG just makes me feel so warm and happy inside. Just a great little detail I hope many of you come to appreciate. The UN agrees to help Japan eventually rebuild. Only if the US and other allies can eventually use Godzilla as a weapon, backing Japan into a corner, forced to choose between destroying Godzilla once and for all and get zero help, or get the help they need and watch as other civilizations wipe out. All of that backstabbing just to have the chance of harnessing god-like power. The US says if Godzilla begins to make its way towards America, they would immediately drop a thermonuclear bomb before Godzilla would even leave the shores of Japan. With Japan itself being at stake in all of these plans, Yaguchi's plan needs to work in order to not only save Japan, but possibly the rest of the world. Through everything, these outcasts, these scientists, these people have been working to save everyone, all while staying positive. If the people working on this project aren't sure of it working, then humanity is sure to be doomed. Through more discoveries using the college professor's notes, we find out that Godzilla has unlimited potential. That discovery is not only terrifying, but hopeful at the same time, in the sense that an organism was so determined to stay alive that it would defy science in order to do so. If anything, that's the most human thing Godzilla has done. Nothing can defy life like a human can. Before his death, the college professor left one piece of information to help. His last words: "Do as you like." At first, our characters thought the professor meant do everything before it's too late, but that's not the case. He meant do what you like with Godzilla. Learn from it, study it, harness its energy, or just flat out destroy it, as the world isn't ready for something of that caliber yet. Do what you want because, as a human, you have the ability to do so. Make a decision, rationalize it, or demonize it. Do what you must as a human being. With that knowledge, all scientists get to work. They all go behind the government's back, spend their own money and resources to get this freezing operation ready to go. And at the pace they're going, everything will be ready the day the UN has agreed to end Godzilla, and possibly the rest of Japan. As the days pass, more and more officials become on board. If everyone isn't on board with this plan, then no one is. With all officials willing to help, Japan has officially decided to act on its own, refusing to follow any rules or stipulations the UN or US has imposed upon them. At this point, it's either save the country or die trying. The plan goes off without a hitch. Everything went well as it possibly could. There isn't a big celebration or anything of the sort. Just a sigh of relief that it's all over. One of our scientists discovered that Godzilla's radiation will disappear after 2 to 3 years, which is great for our characters, but even today, people are still feeling the effects of the 2011 Fukushima disaster. With Godzilla incapacitated but not dead, it doesn't mean the problem ends here. There could always come a day when Godzilla could awake, or maybe something far, far worse. Hey, this is Future Casey here. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Sorry to kind of end it off on a cliffhanger like that. The movie did, so I'm gonna end my video on a cliffhanger. Haha, so funny. Anyway, thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed, I would really appreciate you liking the video, subscribing, sharing it with friends. Do all of the YouTube things, and I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day. And I'll see you guys in another video. Peace.